Hello, hello, hello. Status Coup in the house. Tuesday, February 1st, the year 2022. Delighted to be joined. Friend of the coup, Steve Grumbine of Real Progressives, who's doing great work on Real Progressives and his new show, The Rogue Scholar. The Rogue Scholar, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, noon Eastern time on Real Progress in Action. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too. Make sure you subscribe to Real Progress in Action. It is not a hot take factory. It is real, substantive, progressive news.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.
Absolutely. Boy, Steve, let me tell you something. I don't know about you. We got a big show, by the way. We're going to talk the latest gaslighting by the Democratic Party. Going to talk about some good news for a change. The labor movement is kind of on fire right now by some measurements. And we're also going to have another guest later, Mark Cuban, of all people. I don't know if I trust this. But Mark Cuban has created a low-cost generic pharmaceutical drug company for the express purpose, according to him, of not making money, but lowering prescription drug prices. So we're going to have Michael Lighty on a little bit later. He is with the Sanders Institute, probably the top expert in the country, actually, on universal health care, Medicare for all. So we're going to talk to him about whether Mark Cuban whether this is real or not, and how it could help you, if it can help you on prescription drug prices. But Steve, I don't know about you, because you've worn multiple hats at Real Progressives. Have you ever had to do a mind-numbing volume of administrative bullshit
That's all I do.
while trying to do journalism? Because
No.
literally, for the most part today, I have done a mind-numbing volume of tedious administrative shit because I don't have an assistant at Status Coup. I don't have a general manager at Status Coup. I don't even have really a full-time producer at Status Coup. So I'm a little exhausted from responding to emails, being on the phone with AT&T, being on the phone with my bank. Anyway, I digress. I don't want to bore the viewers. Smash that like button, thumbs up button right under the live stream. Smash that like button. We're close. We're sniffing 128,000 subscribers. And by the way, to new subscribers who have signed up recently and old subscribers, just to remind you, if you want to get notified when we're live, if you want to get notified when we post shorter videos, make sure you click that bell on YouTube. It's the subscribe button. Right next to the subscribe button, there's a bell, and you hover over that bell and click all notifications. Now, it's not a science. I've heard from people, Jordan, I did click the damn bell for all notifications, and I went back and I was unclicked. I don't know, but if that's the case, make sure to go back and look. If you clicked all, go back and check if it's still clicked on all, because there's some funny shit going on these days. Well, for many days with YouTube, where they unclick the bell or unsubscribe you. But make sure if you're a subscriber, hover over that bell, click that bell, and then click all notifications, so you will get all notifications for our live streams. We're back to live Monday through Thursday, 5 o'clock Eastern time, Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern for happy hour and haters. My wife doesn't like that because I snore. Because if I drink, I snore, apparently. But I'm having a good time on Fridays. So we'll see you Friday at 4 o'clock. Steve, let's start with the Chuck E. Cheese, Chuck Schumer, who, the Democratic Party, we talk about them a lot. We're very critical. I think we're fair. But the Democratic Party is now trying their best, because obviously Biden's polls are down under the water with the Titanic. It's not looking good for Biden. It's not looking good for Democrats in November. So they're trying to sell the typical speech. GDP is up, record number of jobs, blah, 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 blah. We talked about some of this last week, that they're trying to put lipstick on a pig and dress up this economy as booming and wonderful and, whatever. But this was a new one. This was Chuck Schumer on the Senate floor, somehow invoking Ronald Reagan as the measuring stick for how great the Democratic Party is doing on the economy. Colin, if we could play this.
The Open Market Committee was perhaps the most optimistic, forecasting a growth rate of about 4.3%. They were all wrong. The U.S. economy shattered most expectations and grew at the amazing rate of 5.7%, the strongest rate since the time of Ronald Reagan. And, Mr. President, this was no accident. Far from it. Last year's historic turnaround is a reminder that the right leadership in government matters. Democrats promised in 2020 to fix Donald Trump's utter mismanagement of the COVID crisis and get our country back on track. And a year later, after securing the strongest growth rate in decades, Democrats are delivering on that promise. After Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, I said, help is on the way. And that help is getting America back on a path to normal. And though we still are learning to live with the virus, our economy, our communities, and our schools are better off because of vaccines, because of testing, and because of targeted legislation we passed last year, like the Restaurants Act and Save Our Stages. And I want to stress an important point that is forgotten too often. We are finally seeing wages go up at a significant rate. That's dollars in the working people's pockets.
I love when the working people's pockets, the working people's pockets.
Steve, you people.
Yes, you people. I was remiss, by the way. I was remiss. I should have said this at the top. For Status Coup viewers that watched yesterday, we had Amar Shagril on. He's the head of the California Democratic Party's Progressive Caucus. We had him on because yesterday there was a vote. There was supposed to be a vote for single-payer health care in California. I know you've been critical, Steve, of trying this piecemeal state by state. The vote did not happen. The vote did not happen because the author of the bill pulled it from the floor. Do not worry, folks. Tina did a follow-up interview. We're going to air that a little bit after this live stream. So we do have an update on the Democratic Party killing single payer in California for the second time in 3-4 years. So that will air. We're probably going to post that at 8 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Pacific. So I just wanted viewers who watched yesterday, we will have an update. Tina interviewed Amar to go over what the hell happened. Why was that bill pulled? But before we get to Chucky Sleaze, he's boosting about the economy, Steve. Here's just rapid fire. Washington Post, rents are up more than 30% in some cities, forcing millions to find another place to live. This is from, 2 days ago. Rents, 30% increase all over the country. Colin, do you have the right article? Kiara Age moved in less than a year ago, and now it's time to move again. Rent on her 2-bedroom apartment in Henderson, Nevada is rising 23% to nearly $1,600 a month, making it impossibly out of reach for the single mother. I don't know if maybe I sent you the wrong article, but this article, hold on, let me send it to you real quick, Colin. This article shows rents are up 30%. Oh, you got it, Colin? Perfect. So rents are up 30% in most cities. That's just one example. Age makes $15 an hour working from home as a medical biller while also caring for her 1-year-old son because she can't afford childcare. So that's the wonderful economy. Rents jacking up 30%. Thank you to the real estate developers who run our local and state governments. Then you have, Steve, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, a new poll. This is from NBC News. A new poll shows that 61% of those polled say their family's income is falling behind the cost of living on the economy, while job creation is up and the unemployment rate is down. 61% of respondents in the poll say their family's income is falling behind the cost of living. So that's another way of saying can't keep up with expenses. Then we move on. Just 39% of Americans could pay for a $1,000 emergency expense. This is from last year. That's kind of along the same lines of, what was it? I think 40 to 50% of Americans who can't afford a $400 emergency. So all of these things, bang, 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 bang. Yet Schumer and the Democrats, I don't know if they think people are stupid or it's kind of like that Obama magic, where if you just kind of sprinkle that economic fairy dust, don't worry that people don't feel it. Maybe they'll just believe you. What are your thoughts? Because that's a new level, invoking Reagan. Best numbers since Reagan. By the way, Colin, if you have that chart, they're invoking Reagan. Here's how the economy fared over the last 40 years, thanks to Ronald Reagan. You see that? See that orange line at the bottom? It's the bottom 90% wage. See that top curvy line, 229%? That's the top 1%. So they're invoking Reagan, Steve. Well, I don't know. 1980, what happened? He won.
Well,
your thoughts?
Well, isn't this like the 12th term of Ronald Reagan? I mean,
apparently,
haven't we just had a nonstop Ronald Reagan presidency? I'm not even joking. This is literally every election cycle. We have another Reagan come through the door. Different rhetoric, different whatever, different affect, same policies, same approach, same everything. When it came to this pandemic response, we've talked about this so often that I almost feel like, you have to not be listening on purpose to not get this by now to the world, right? It's like they've obscured this so much. But the fact is that most of the monies that were spent during the pandemic went to the top of the food chain, went all the way up to the top. And what do people do that have more than enough money to pay their regular bills? It goes into the market and it makes them more money, right? A lot of these people are rentier class. They're out there renting their apartments or squatting on houses. They're driving the cost of rents up because they know that they can. And so right here, right now, the same exact scenario where that balkanized view of society exists, where the haves are really, really raking it in big time and the have-nots are barely putzing through. I mean, a guy called me today to offer me a potential for another job. Now, I don't want it. I like the job I have, but I listened to him because why wouldn't you listen? And he offered me literally $2 an hour less than what I'm making in my current job. And I said to him, I said, is this considered to be a good wage here? He goes, well, this is the highest wage that they're allowing us to give. Now, mind you, this is the same position. It's a contract position and there's a set wage. And it is literally less money now than it was a few years back. How is that even possible? It's still a highly professional, highly skilled position that requires lots of certifications and everything else. But yet now all of a sudden the wage this is $2 an hour less than it was. Now, no benefits, no days off, no nothing. This is what they're replacing old work with, is shit wages with shit benefits, and you're expected to be thrilled about it. But you look
Colin,
at the story that you put out there, the Washington Post story, real quick. And once again, you've got a woman making $15 an hour and the rent is going up another couple $100 a month. Her wages didn't go up. Nothing about her life got less expensive. And there's nothing, the people that own those homes, it's not like they suddenly had to pay more money for those homes. Their mortgage or whatever they have on that house is the same as it was before. Taxes didn't go up. So what exactly drove the cost of the rent up? You think about it for a minute. It really does come down to gouging, and they made huge amounts of money through the pandemic, and now on top of it, they're going to play on that game and gouge us because they can, and it's not going to get any better. I'm furious.
So what you're saying, Steve, Colin, if we could play it one more time.
Our schools are better off because of vaccines, because of testing that is forgotten too often. We are finally seeing wages go up at a significant rate. That's dollars in the working people's pockets.
So wait a minute. And Colin, by the way, let's cut that for perpetual use, for perpetual use, the working people's pockets. I definitely want Chuck E. Cheese that for perpetual use. But so what you're saying is, on paper, there's numbers going up, but those numbers aren't necessarily actually reality in terms of improving people's material lives. It's like they're numbers, but it's just bullshit categories that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, by the way, it's not just Democrats, are pushing out there cyclically every election cycle to make it look like things are booming. But in reality, apartment prices are going up, home prices are going up, food prices are going up, everything's going up, but the minimum wage is not going up. There's temporary measures. Oh, we temporarily gave you a child tax credit. That's gone. Hey,
Yep.
let's do a victory lap. We cut child poverty in half for 5 minutes. So it's just amazing to me. I genuinely think that Schumer and the Democrats think just using these kind of artificial categories, they could fool people into thinking things are actually good.
So if you think about this, the measures that they're talking about, they are always done in aggregate. In other words, you're not taking away the top, you're not taking away the bottom. It's just the aggregate, this big honking pipe of information that says nothing about nothing. There's no stratification, there's no explanation of how class plays out into that overall big number. And that big number has gone up. Guess what? Of course it's gone up, because all of that money is in Wall Street right now. All of that money is in stock buybacks. All that money is literally in investor grade bullshit. It is not going to the people. It is absolutely 100% not going to the people. But when you take an aggregate number, you can make it say anything you'd like it to say. And this is the problem. We need to really get into understanding what various levels are. Like that one chart you had that showed the very, very minuscule upgrade for the working class, while the executives and the rich, 220%. That this is a chronic problem in this country. And it's not just, I want to get away from it just being gotchas, right? This is really super important. This is not an accident. This is literally the way that the system is designed to work. They know for a fact, and this is why it is so important to get our economics correct in the way we talk to one another. They know for a fact that most people, and the Bitcoiners are helping out with this, folks. All that Bitcoin community is doing is really fueling these rentier people's pockets by making everyone believe that because the government spent money into the economy, that it is going to create inflation. By stating that and speaking it into the universe, it gives air cover to these rentier class people. It gives air cover to all of the companies.
Can you dumb it down for us non-MMT people? What's
Let's dumb it
rentier
down.
people?
The people that own the buildings and are renting out your apartment to you, the landlords. This is the rent-seeking behavior is at an all-time high, because these folks are making money hand over fist, and there's no rent control, there's no nothing preventing them from doing this. And because we, the people, have been dumbed down into believing that because the government spent money, that automatically equals inflation. Look at how many of these crypto fascists run around talking about they're debasing the currency. The ignorance is so strong and so severe. They are literally giving air cover to the landlord class. We'll use that. The landowning class, these people that are gouging the hell out of the poor, these slumlord millionaires. They are literally giving them air cover to believe that because the government spent on the people, that naturally that means we have debased the currency. Well, you cannot debase a free-floating fiat currency, which means that it's not pegged to gold. In other words, I don't want to bore you with minutia, but this is such an important thing. You know, people believe that that we can debase our currency. In other words, we have like a pie of gold, and that we keep carving smaller and smaller slices of it. That's how we debase the currency, because the dollar is tied to a slice of gold. And the smaller and smaller and smaller that thing is, the worse we get. So ultimately, they're out there telling everyone that we're debasing the currency, but we clearly know that's not the case. That's not how it works. We have a free-floating fiat currency. So they're using this lie, and this lie helps the crypto fascists make money, because they make you believe that the dollar is going to lose its value, and simultaneously allow the rent class, the rentier, the landlord class, to raise rates and jack up prices because we believe that that's how inflation happens. But it's not
Right.
how inflation happens. Inflation happens because people are stealing, they're gouging, they're literally jacking prices up because they can. It's got nothing to do with printing money. And these liars on the crypto fascist side and the liars in the government and the liars that own the properties, they're all in on it. And this is the way the system is working. And
We're gonna have to do
literally
we're gonna have to do we're gonna have to do a separate show on just what crypto fascists are, because I'm very intrigued.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I'd love to do that. I'd love to do crypto fascists, because I don't lie, I don't quite get the crypto. I've tried to understand it. It's a little over my head, but I am interested in the whole crypto fascism. The last thing I'll say on this topic is, at the end of the day, it's not a coincidence that when economically in a time far, far, far long ago, Steve, when there was a little more egalitarianism, when the CEO did not make 300 times more than the worker bee, when one parent could work and the other one could stay home if they wanted, when families had enough money to maybe take a vacation, maybe have 2 cars, when there was, wealthier people had what taxes were higher on wealthier people. It is not a coincidence that during those times, let's say the mid 40s through the 1970s, where things were a little more equal. I mean, the parties that were presiding over that, poll numbers were very high. The parties that presided over that economic egalitarianism, for the most part, won elections, kept Congress. So I think the Democratic Party thinks that if they just continue sprinkling this fairy dust and point to GDP and the stock market, and they're pointing out wages are up slightly. Yeah, wages are up slightly, but so is the price gouging and the corporate Neanderthals, jacking up prices during a pandemic, while, by the way, evictions are going on. So I genuinely believe they don't get that if they would have done 15% of Build Back Better, like the major things, okay, they'd be doing a lot better right now. If they would have done 1 or 2 executive actions, I'm talking Biden, that would have helped people economically, lowering prescription drug prices, whatever it is, things would be a lot better right now in polling, in looking ahead to the midterms. They just don't seem to get it that they could actually do it and win elections and not have to rely on the donor money if they actually did these economic things. The problem is, as we always talk about, they don't want to do it because their donors will not allow them to do it. Your parting thoughts on that topic?
I think you nailed it. I think it's not just the donor class. I think that you figure each of these parties, forget the elected officials, the party Illuminati, the whole the big wigs within the party, right? These guys are all like freaking seasoned lobbyists and seasoned policy wonks. They understand what the people want. They do know this stuff. This is not like some secret to them. The fact is that they are not there to serve that. They're there to obscure that they're doing that while simultaneously not doing that. And this, they're not dumb. I mean, I refuse to give them a pass that they just don't get it. Like they're just clueless. They just don't get it. They freaking get it. That's why Schumer's up there praising Ronald Reagan, because this is the only way that they have to obscure. Hey, we're growing just like it did under Reagan. Well, let me replay everything you ever said about the economy under Reagan. Let's get a nice, playlist of Schumer's comments about Reaganism over the years. I mean, this is a convenient, like, hey, let's point to this because, yeah, the economy is growing. Technically, all GDP is just indiscriminate growth. But it's not growth for the people. It's growth for the rich. It's got nothing to do with regular people. It's that aggregate pipe. Always remember, when they talk about GDP, they're talking about aggregates, and aggregates can tell you any damn thing they want without giving you the specific stratification. Trust me on this, man.
And one more time, Colin, if you could put up the income inequality chart. So the next time the Democrats gaslight you, invoking, we haven't seen these kind of numbers since Ronald Reagan. well, here's your booming economy over the last 40 years. I don't know. What happened in 1980? Did Ronald Reagan win the presidency? Because it seems like 1980, 1981, all of a sudden that line went up on steroids. And by the way, the Democratic Party was moving right under Reagan and was on board with a lot of this pixie dust, trickle down voodoo bullshit. And then the Democratic Party under Clinton moved further right. And all that income inequality kept going up. The one thing that's steady, Steve, it kept going up during war. It kept going up during after 9/11. It kept going up after the collapse of the global financial crash. And it has kept going up under Democrats and Republicans. So it seems to me their definition of the economy booming is very thwarted compared to reality of that chart.
Well, it depends on
Absolutely.
who they're talking about, right? It depends on
Yeah.
who they're talking about. For some people, it's really kicking some serious ass. Let's just be
Absolutely.
fair. It ain't kicking it for
Absolutely.
regular Jane and Joe six pack, though.
That is true. Let's before I move on to the next topic, folks, please smash that like button. It's right under the video, the thumbs up button. Share this live stream to get it out to more people. We know YouTube, occasionally does not like to distribute our content. So please press that like button. I just want to give a quick shout out, by the way, because we're still getting new Status Coup member signups. So I'm excited about this. We need to keep growing and keep getting new signups. So welcome new Status Coup member Stephanie, Tony, John, and Layla Charles. So that's 4 new members just today. I think we got another patron too. But statuscoup.com/join. Sign up for $5 a month. That's 16 cents a day. You could support our investigative reporting and our on-the-ground reporting, which I'm hoping to get back on the ground in the next few weeks as COVID cases go down. But we need you. We don't take money for the big banks, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, the military-industrial complex, Chuck Schumer. We're funded by you. And for $5 a month, we're also, by the way, seeing a lot of members actually increase their membership. They started at $5 a month, and they're choosing to go up to $10 or other higher levels. So that we love to see, because as you know, Steve, it ain't easy to actually fund investigative or on-the-ground reporting without selling out and taking easy corporate money, which we have not and we will not. So please, statuscoup.com/join, $5 a month, or you could sign up at the higher levels. By the way, for new members, if you missed our members call, because we do a monthly members call through Zoom, we did it last week. New members, you can rewatch it. It's under the members section on statuscoupmember.com. You could watch the members call from last week. Steve, I want to move on because I don't know. I don't want to oversell it, but there's some movement here in the labor movement. There's serious movement going on in the labor movement. Let's start with Starbucks. Obviously, I was on the ground in Buffalo, showing that in the lead up to them winning the first unionized Starbucks in Buffalo. Now there's 3 that are unionized in Buffalo. And since the Buffalo victory, it's been spreading like wildfire. So here, Starbucks union push spreads to 54 states. 54 stores in 19 states. Starbucks is facing a fast-growing union campaign just weeks after the first U.S. corporate store unionized in Buffalo. Employees at 54 stores in 19 states are pursuing union elections, according to organizers. 15 of those stores joined the union drive just yesterday, petitioning the federal labor officials to set a vote. The filing coincides with the start of contract negotiations between Starbucks unionized workers in Buffalo. I do believe I'm going to have an interview tomorrow with somebody part of the Starbucks unionization campaign. So that's Starbucks. Amazon, which, as far as I know, I've been one of the only journalists continuing to go to the Staten Island warehouse for the last 8-9 months. Amazon workers who have been organizing in Staten Island to win the first unionized Amazon in the country. And let me tell you something, what you're seeing with Starbucks, if Amazon workers are successful in Staten Island, trust me, that thing is going to spread far and wide all over the country. And none of Jeff Bezos' space shuttles could stop it. But Amazon workers in Staten Island, they have collected enough signatures to hold their own union vote. Employees garnered more than 2,500 signatures from workers saying, yes, we want a union. So Amazon workers at a warehouse in Staten Island have collected enough signatures to vote on unionizing, the National Labor Relations Board said Wednesday. That was last week. The union reached a sufficient showing of interest, the NLRB said. The milestone came as Amazon faces another major union effort in Alabama. That's in Bessemer, which they will have a revote now. They lost the vote last year. The NLRB ruled that Amazon broke the law during that election process. So they're now having a revote. But this is pretty big. The Starbucks is obviously very big. And I would say so is what's going on in Staten Island, because no disrespect to the Starbucks workers, each store, you're talking, I don't know, 20, 30, maybe 40 employees. This Amazon warehouse is over 5,000 employees. So, and Amazon's turnover rate is 150%, meaning Amazon is hiring and firing workers at this one massive warehouse, Staten Island, at literally 150% turnover rate. So the fact that they got enough signatures is pretty huge. Colin, is that my end or his end that's having the problems?
Are we having a problem?
His end.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's your end. Yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of distorted and freezing and stopping here and there. So,
okay. Sorry about that. It looks good here, but I'm sorry.
But let me ask you, Steve. We talk a lot of doom and gloom. What are your thoughts on the Starbucks in specific? Because this is a lot of momentum. And now that it's kind of all of these stores, I mean, Starbucks at first it was trying to stop just 1 or 2 stores in Buffalo, but now it's 54 stores all over the country. So they obviously, now it's just whack-a-mole trying to, it's a tsunami now of stores trying to unionize.
I think it's great. I mean, any positive motion towards getting people organized to fight back is great, whether it be at Starbucks, Amazon, or, any other business. We have such a low unionization in this country. I mean, even though you're seeing these increased things happen, you actually have lower unionization right now, even to this day. So it's a real challenge, to be fair. But it obviously, anytime you can see labor organizing, irrespective of political party, irrespective of race or gender, coming together as workers, as the 99% and organizing, that's a very good thing. And I believe very strongly that unionization and uniting labor as a whole is probably our best bet at actually making a difference going forward, because clearly getting behind the blue team or the red team isn't getting us anywhere. It's going to have to happen outside of the two parties. It's going to have to happen in some other way. And I imagine as long as the unions don't get too cozy with the Democrats reliving some old past glory that doesn't exist anymore, I think that that's a really, really positive thing for all of us, because everything that is good for them trickles out to the rest of us in this sense, because it creates the energy for labor. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. This is still a very, very small blip, but it's a very positive sign for sure.
And I also think people need to recognize, let's start with Starbucks. Yeah, I mean, get excited that they're winning union elections, but that's like, I would say 50% of it. Then you have a Herculean task of actually getting a contract, getting a fair contract with a corporate scumbag like Starbucks. So right now, the first unionized Starbucks in Buffalo, they're beginning the process of trying to go to the negotiation table with Starbucks. And I can tell you just from sources I have, they're kicking and screaming Starbucks. So they have to, by law, recognize them, but that doesn't mean they have to, by law, work in good faith and quickly work to get a contract going. So, it remains to be seen what will happen as far as how quickly a contract will come for the first unionized store, what that contract will look at. And just because they lost the union vote doesn't mean they're not going to try and screw the workers on a contract. Fortunately, with these Starbucks workers, they have experienced old union hands working with them. These ones are not the corrupt union hands. So that's good. I wanted to also bring this up, Steve, because I don't know if this is like real or not, but some Democrats are actually trying to pass legislation to protect striking workers and their health care. So this is from Politico. A group of House Democrats plan to introduce legislation Wednesday blocking employers from cutting off striking workers' health care benefits. Congresswoman Cindy Axne will lead the effort along with Congressmen Steve Cohen, Linda Sanchez, Bill Pascrell, Brian Higgins, Jim McGovern, and Nikema Williams. Axne represents the Iowa district in which John Deere workers were on strike last year, and Cohen, the Tennessee district in which Kellogg workers were on strike. In both labor disputes, the employees reportedly lost access or almost lost access to health care and other benefits while participating in the work stoppages. Quote, exercising your right to fight for a better contract shouldn't mean risking your ability to get the essential health coverage for yourself or your family, Congressman Axne said. This is a basic measure, one born of the unfortunate reality that employers use termination of health coverage to break strikes and force employees to accept a subpar contract. So I have two thoughts on this. Why do these congressmen think we need to protect workers' health care when they're on to allow them to go on strike, but not to allow them to leave the job? How are those two things different? Because I don't know if this is just kind of, theater and they're not actually going to really push for this, but it's a great bill. And I'm for. If you take that off the table, you will see even more workers go on strike if they still have their health care. But it seems like a cognitive disconnect where they're saying, they should not have to fear losing their health care. Well, workers shouldn't have to fear losing their health care, period. If they're getting exploited at work, abused at work, for workers that don't have a union to go and they can't go on strike. So what are your thoughts first on this measure? And then what I'm talking about, why are they only going to protect their health care benefits so that they can strike?
Well, I think you already know. I mean, part of this is that the neoliberal model is that they want you to have employer-based healthcare because they want you to need a job. Okay, so part of their way of devising society is to force you into these circumstances. They know that if the companies can literally cut you off, then that is going to make people even more willing to fight for single payer healthcare. They're going to be more willing to fight for universal healthcare to avoid employer paid, to take that power back away from employers. But that's the neoliberal model. So anything that they can do to keep employer paid healthcare intact, as opposed to moving to a single payer model, they're going to do that. Because it's really more important that you always believe the government cannot afford to do these things. Only the rich people, only the big corporations can do these things. The government is completely out of money, completely broke, completely feckless, can't do anything right. We must rely on corporations to do this for us. We must rely on the rich to be kind and benevolent and, rain their urine down on our head and call it rain. I mean, this is the neoliberal way, and they are going to defend that tooth and nail, period. This is literally the model. So this bill, while on one hand is, I guess, good in the sense that it gives striking workers some security if it passes, it's also there to protect the model that is employer-based healthcare. That is, make no mistake about it, that is not really a gift to striking workers. That is a way of them saying, we're strengthening the existing model. No thanks, man. I mean, yay. I mean, good for them. Hopefully it doesn't cause them to cave and cross picket lines. But the fact is that this is not out of some benevolent, act. This is 100% about defending the neoliberal healthcare model itself, and protecting them from any kind of fallout that might occur from an employer that would otherwise destroy their model. That's what it comes down to.
And I also have a very hard time thinking something like that would pass. I don't think Republicans would provide any support, but I also think the Democratic Party donors don't want workers having more built-in leverage to go on strike, because strikes are not good for business. So, hey, I mean, if these Congress people are serious about doing it, points for them for at least proposing it. Because you would see. I mean, I could tell you when I was on the ground in Iowa covering the John Deere strikes, that was one of the main things workers were telling me that they were stressed about. Yeah, the loss in pay. They did get some strike pay from the union pot, because part of your union dues go to, if you go on strike, you get some of your pay through the union. But I
Very
mean,
little.
a lot of them were very worried about the health care, not just for themselves, but for their kids. So that is a massive thing if you could get something like this through. And I would, if in a fantasy land, if two Republicans were for this and Manchin and Sinema didn't block it or whatever, and they could actually pass something like this, I think you would see a significant more of a number of strikes, because you take that off the table and people just have to kind of figure out for those weeks you're on strike, just closing the gaps on your paycheck. I think that incentivizes a lot of people. But I do think you're right that it's not exactly changing the system, and that these Congress people still want you indentured to your job based on healthcare.
That's right. That's really what it comes down to. I want to say something about the point you made about, your dues going in and so forth. I was in the local CWA 2222 out in Northern Virginia as a cable splicer. And when we would go on strike, we would make, let's just say hypothetically, a cable splicer could work 100 hours a week, get double time and a half for everything after the first 9 hours of overtime. They get time and a half on Sunday. Lots of great overtime pay. But when it came time for the strike, they give you $200. So you ended up having to go deliver pizzas at, Domino's or something like that. You had no choice but to pick up a part-time job to survive that. And, that's not paying the bills. That's nowhere near enough to pay the bills. So strikers start off, if you aren't one of the people that have huge amounts of money saved up, it's very, very hard to stay on the line during a strike because they just simply don't have the money. They don't have the resources to keep you flush for more than a couple weeks. So strikes that go on for a month or two, that really starts eating into people's personal savings if they have any. And as you've stated already, most people don't have enough money to put $400 away, much less strike for 2 or 3 months. And that's really the kind of power that labor would need to take advantage of these things. So yay on the healthcare, but really fairness. I mean, there should be some sort of payroll protection for striking workers as well.
Absolutely. And I will say the one thing I saw, and I haven't been covering strikes for years, but one thing I saw, at least with John Deere, there's a lot more mutual aid coming in. No, it does not end up, filling that gap between your full salary. But there was a lot more mutual aid coming in, particularly in Iowa at those John Deere picket lines, donations coming in, food being sent, even rotations of babysitters for childcare so that the strikers could be out on the picket lines. That does not close the gap. But I think if you see more strikes and you see more union drives and you see more victories, mutual aid just organically amplifies from that solidarity. Some of these strikes have had GoFundMe campaigns. No, that should not be the policy. They should be able to go on strike and get most of their pay in healthcare, because if technically we are a labor country, which we're not, but the politicians say we are, it should be you should be able to go on strike, and the companies would want to rectify and come to a deal a lot sooner if they still had to pay the workers. So it's just I'm very, very encouraged. I don't want to oversell it, but I am encouraged. The Starbucks thing is big. This Amazon thing to me is very big, because not to discount these 50 plus stores. If you get one Amazon factory in America unionized, especially this one, which is the size of 15 football fields, if they can't stop it in Staten Island, the Staten Island warehouse, and I've been there many times covering it, if they are successful, I mean, that's going to really unlock Pandora's box. And I will say, if you think Amazon union busting have been bad thus far, and I've broken a lot of stories on their union busting in Staten Island, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because now that they have an actual election, they don't have a date yet, but now that they have an actual election, Jeff Bezos is going to do everything humanly possible, including sending all the workers on a space shuttle to space, so they can't vote. So we'll keep on it. We'll keep on it. There's one more story, and I'm delighted to bring on Michael Leidy. Michael Leidy with the Sanders Institute. You are one of, if not the preeminent experts on universal health care. You were digging Medicare for all and fighting the good fight before it was even a term. So we've spoken before, and I texted you because I don't know. I'm a little suspect about this because it involves Mark Cuban. It involves I think he's a billionaire. It involves a billionaire, and there's not really many billionaires that are genuinely, when they say they're trying to do philanthropy or something good, that's the actual purpose. But let's just give the facts here. Mark Cuban has created an online pharmacy for the express purpose of providing generic drugs, expensive, big pharmaceutical drugs that people cannot get cheaper. This company that he's launching is finding a way to offer drugs at significantly, I'm talking drastically less money. Mark Cuban's announcement over the weekend of an online pharmacy selling over 100 generic drugs at near cost was totally unexpected, but will likely be welcomed by millions who struggle to afford medication. The billionaire told TechCrunch that the business model is refreshingly simple: lower prices, reduce patient stress, and that will lead to more customers. Interesting. The cost plus drug company aims very simply to provide as many common medications as possible in generic form, as low at as low a price as possible, all cash, no IP deals, no insurance company, just buy pills for what they cost to make, plus 15% to cover overhead. Asked about the return on investment, Cuban admitted there isn't much to speak of by design. Quote, I want to be above break even while maximizing the number of people who could afford their medications. Shoot, I would be happy if we could make a little, but push pricing of generics sold elsewhere down significantly. So, Michael, we'll get to the fact that this obviously doesn't change the system. But just on what Mark Cuban's company supposedly does, what are your initial thoughts? Because it sounds like an amazing thing. I don't even know how Big Pharma, I mean, I would have thought Big Pharma would be doing everything they can to stop this. But what's your initial thoughts on what he's doing?
Well, it's very positive. It's, of course, getting people lower priced prescription drugs is a good thing. And I think that the fact that he's not selling prescription drugs with the primary motivation being profit, which is true even of generic companies, let alone the brand name manufacturers and distributors, is a positive because, of course, we've got way too much market for profit incentives and dynamics in prescription drugs as we have in the entire healthcare system. So on principle, it's a much better approach. Lower prices, focus not on profits, but on a broad base of folks, serving a broad base of folks who need it. So that it's certainly in that sense a positive. Does it still try to solve the problem through a market-based approach? Yes, it does. And that's unfortunate. But again, when you take the profit motive out of that, it kind of balances the equation somewhat more favorably, I think.
And when he's saying, the simpleness of it, yeah, if we make it affordable, we think we'll just get more customers. We'll have so many more customers. Right. Let's say this was significantly successful, and I think it could be. Would that do a lot of damage to Big Pharma? And would Big Pharma have to start lowering its prices? How do you think that dynamic would play?
I think it would do damage to the generic sector. But keep in mind, where the big money is in brand name and especially specialty drugs. The ones you see marketed on TV are the ones that they make a lot of money providing, manufacturing and selling. So something like Trulicity, for example, a high-end diabetes drug that gets a lot of airplay on TV and commercials, you try to buy that just out of pocket on a monthly basis, and it's $1,300. This isn't going to impact that. It's not going to impact the big name drug manufacturers. It's going to put pressure on the generic sector. And in that sense, it's low hanging fruit because that's not where really the big money, the big profits, the big spending is. So I think it's going to be limited in terms of its impact on the pharmaceutical industry in general, and especially on the big name players.
And as he's doing this, Colin, I sent you this before. I don't know if you have it, but this is from the Wall Street Journal. Drug makers raised prices by 6.6% on average early this year. So that's just this year.
Right.
Drug 6.6%. The companies kept most increases in the single digits for another year as Congress explores measures to curb high costs, which we've been hearing that for the last 20 years, that they're going to curb higher costs. But drug makers raised list prices by an average of 6.6% in the first few weeks of this year on cancer, diabetes, and other prescription medicines, sticking with more moderate increases while lawmakers scrutinized pricing practices. So basically, it sounds like you're saying what Cuban's company is doing, it's going to address a lot of important drugs that people use, but not the most type of specialty drugs that he can't get his hands on.
Right. It's not gonna have, as we were suggesting, a systemic, change at the fundamental level about what we actually need to reorient the availability and cost and lower the cost of prescription drugs. It's not going to change it at the systemic level, and it's probably not going to impact the major manufacturers and big drug companies. But on the other hand, to the extent it is part of an environment that puts pressure on prescription drug prices, that shows that there are alternatives to how big pharma conducts its business and how it deprives patients of the medications they need, that's all to the good, because we do need a different, obviously, messaging and political context to really achieve fundamental reform. So Cuban puts pressure using some market mechanisms, lowering costs. Sure, that's going to have, I think, a ripple effect in terms of how the issue is viewed, how people experience it. And once patients have access to lower priced prescription drugs, that's going to impact the manufacturers. Ultimately, they're going to be under pressure to provide those drugs at lower cost. So I think he's onto something there. I mean, the Amazon pharmacy was an attempt to do that. Obviously, they have a non-insurance price. Seems like the Cuban model might be more aggressive and really taking the profit out and not relying upon the kind of exploitation, obviously, that's inherent in Amazon. So that's also a good thing. Undermining the Amazon model could be an ancillary benefit as well.
Steve, what are your
Let me
thoughts?
ask you a question. Yeah, just as I hear this, I really think a lot of this comes down to patent law. I mean, the length of time these folks are able to sit on a patent and extend a patent is absurd. Obviously, Mark Cuban has shown moments of time where he is very human, where he's very willing to be one of the people. I mean, he didn't come from the most high echelon. He came from the working class. This is a guy who I've seen at times, for a billionaire. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a billionaire, but of the billionaires I've seen, he's one of the few people who seems to actually have some understanding of the struggle of regular people. I'm curious, given the fact that when Bernie tried to do the imports through Canada and you had Cory Booker deep six that, basically, I'm curious, are we going to have a rotating villain here blocking this? Or do we have some other form of marauder that's gonna create havoc and block this? Because it seems like the Democrats always find a way to impact the good things that are happening out there.
Gee, I don't know why you're so cynical, Steve. I think that you're right. I mean, find out where the generic manufacturers are concentrated in the U.S., and you'll find the Congress member or senator who's going to push back on this, because that's the sector that's going to receive the heat. And I totally agree with you. Why aren't there diabetes medications available on a generic basis? Because they've manipulated the patent process so successfully, they don't sell them on a generic basis. So Lilly and Abbott and the rest of them can make tons of money. So until you change patents, and in fact, the truth is, as you know, the Biden administration has a lot of administrative power to deal with the patent issue, and how they could, in fact, determine that these drugs are overpriced, that their availability is denied, and that they can put pressure on those manufacturers and even go to what's called compulsory licensing and manufacture themselves in government facilities. So there is a lot of ability to actually directly hit this sector and their manipulation of patents. And until I think a lot of the generic drugs, of course, are manufactured overseas. India is a big supplier, for example. So that may also be why this is more politically tenable, because it may not have the same impact domestically as some other approaches would.
And let me ask you, Michael, just a quick detour. I remember when Biden ran, if you recall, because I know you were glued to every primary debate, he said, no, COVID treatment free. Treatment has to be free. I don't know. I've talked to people that have been in the hospital for a couple days to a couple weeks, and they're getting bills that are going to bankrupt them. So I don't know. We were told that this one's different. It's a pandemic, so it'll be free, but nothing has been free. Next to nothing has been free other than the vaccines. If you know, so can you kind of touch on this pandemic is continuing, and even people that need, you know, limited hospital care or, you know, outpatient care, they're getting insane volume of bills.
Well, it reflects the power of the corporate healthcare industry and specifically the corporate hospital chains and their ability to manipulate coding and to basically say, oh, sure, we gave you COVID treatment, but actually it's not really just COVID. It's all these other things. And we're going to code it in such a way that we're going to demand payment. And it doesn't, and the fact is that these hospital corporations have bought off, like other sectors of the healthcare industry, the politicians and the regulators who would otherwise limit their ability to profit off of human suffering. And in this case, profit off the most kind of outrageous kind of suffering, which is from a contagious pandemic. And so this again reflects the inability of the current regulatory approach and financing system to actually rein in these corporate practices. In fact, arguably incentivizes them to upcode so that they get higher reimbursements, to actually incentivize them to find ways around requirements for free provision of care. Because of course, if you had a single system where you could actually punish, you know, providers when they manipulate these kinds of opportunities, you would have the ability to really, I think, destroy the incentives for them to do that kind of a manipulation. But the truth is, Medicare does have the ability in these hospital settings, right, to do some level of punishment, and they don't. And why is that? Because of the cozy relationship that exists between the regulators and the hospital providers in particular. But of course, you've also got the commercial insurers in the mix, and they want to make sure to maximize, you know, their ability to limit care. And so they're not necessarily just going to be handing out, you know, coverage for these kinds of problems that people result from having COVID. So and then ultimately, when they mean, you know, Jordan, when they say free care, they mean government paid care, right?
Hmm.
And so ultimately, it comes back to the public. They're feeding it the public trough. And that's the perverse incentives of the system. Maximize the private profit, maximize reimbursement from the government, and shift as many costs as you can onto taxpayers. And that's a direct result of not having single payer.
I got to ask you this because, you know, I talk a lot with a gentleman named Bill Black who brought down the Keating Five as auditor #1. Just a brilliant man, friend of Bernie, friend of the gang. I am curious here. We have made regulatory funding for the actual regulators to be so minuscule, so absolutely feckless, impossible to keep up with at Wall Street to monitor all the different trades and SEC type stuff. We don't have it there. We don't have it in healthcare. Everywhere we have regulatory bodies, we have made it so underfunded, so understaffed, so cozy, if you will, by bringing insiders from the industry into these positions. And I understand a little bit of that because you got to have some knowledge to be able to really know what's going on. But there is no real, you know, firewall there. We're talking about a real cozy relationship at the regulatory level on just about every single aspect of regulation in this country, not just healthcare. What do you think? What would be your suggestion if you were talking to activists of how to organize specifically about an issue that most people probably their eyes would roll back in their head? It would be better to watch paint dry or watch grass grow than to talk about regulators. But this is where the rubber meets the road. This is the actual place where you're actually going to get some satisfaction in ending corruption. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we confronted this, Steve, in the case of Wall Street, right, in the aftermath of the financial crisis, and there was this whole push, Dodd-Frank and these other regulatory schemes, right? Oh, we're going to reform Wall Street. We're going to actually, regulate their practices, and we said, not going to work. Let's tax them instead. And so that's where the financial transaction tax came in. Let's just capture, hundreds of billions of dollars from them and devote that to human needs. And then if you tax certain behavior, that's probably going to be more effective than trying to regulate it. So we could reduce speculation, for example. You could reduce the incentives for high frequency trading. That so in a sense, really kind of follow the money. Same principle applies for Medicare for all. Have the entire system regulated by a Medicare for all system so that the rates are lowered, and you fund that regulatory apparatus directly, and then also provide incentives so that the hospitals, if they go beyond the rates, or if they abuse the system by upcoding and so forth, you say, okay, then you're out of the system and you no longer have a hospital. And in fact, we'll publicize, we'll nationalize your hospital essentially, right? We'll say, okay, you can't operate it as a private operator because you're exploiting the system. We'll simply take it over for the public good. Those are the kinds of mechanisms ultimately you need to have. The ability to, and the same thing with compulsory licensing that we're talking about prescription drugs. Okay, you're going to exploit your market position. We're going to manufacture the product instead. Same with the Defense Production Act. All this supply chain greed going on as a result of the pandemic. No, we're going to take over those facilities, produce the goods ourselves. Those are the kinds of solutions, I think, ultimately that are far more effective than a strictly regulatory approach. But then let's say in terms of, and I think compulsory license is a great issue for activists to work on. Sounds wonky, but it's basically, we're going to nationalize the production of prescription drugs because you guys are exploiting us and denying us what we need. Similarly, let's engage in a budget fight. Let's fund the regulators, right? Why not have a fight over the fact that we consumers, again, what happened to the consumer protection movement? People say, oh, the anti-regulatory agenda is somehow good for the country. No, it's not. It's part of what you were talking about earlier, the neoliberal agenda that says private companies can regulate themselves. That's the essence, right, of neoliberalism. No, let's fund the public sector to protect us. Let's reimagine what it means for government to actually protect its people. That's what I think it comes down to.
I love your answer. It's with you.
You're getting Steve too excited. I would be remiss before I let you go, Michael. And you and Steve might disagree on this actually, because I don't think he's for trying to get Medicare for all, universal health care on a state level. But California yesterday, we covered it yesterday. CalCare, which was single payer, supposed to hold a vote. I don't know, California Democrats run the whole thing. It got pulled. It did not go for a vote. The quote unquote progressive who sponsored the bill said he pulled it because he didn't have the votes. I heard there was a contentious meeting after that on the fact that he pulled it, but that's it. That was the last day to vote on it. So now, what is it? Another 3-4 years of wilderness. So what are your thoughts? Frankly, I think it's a bunch of bullshit that they didn't vote on it. I would rather, if I'm a progressive, I'd rather put it to a vote, even if it loses, get the corporatists on the record who are voting against it, and then primary them. So what are your thoughts on, I mean, I don't want to say it went down in California because they didn't even vote on it, but it being pulled from the floor.
Well, first of all, if you're going to hold the vote, then you have to be prepared to carry out electoral consequences. All that was talked about was, okay, we're going to withhold endorsements. That's not sufficient. I think you're right, Jordan. If you are going to say we want accountability, then here's the $2 million fund we have to take out the Democrats who vote against us. There was no indication that that existed. There was no indication that there was a political will to do that. And there's a deep pocket involved here who could make such, I think, an assertion. So it's not. So I agree with you. There's got to be a direct relationship of accountability, and endorsements is not enough. On the other hand, if you think that we're going to be able to win over people, right, who might at this point vote no and lock themselves into that position in a way that's going to be not tenable for them to back out, that's an argument. I think the most salient thing that the author said was he didn't have sufficient organizational support, in the political world to move recalcitrant legislators. That means that the organizations, progressive organizations, unions primarily, probably, who fund these Democrats, were not telling those Democrats to vote for the bill. And in state legislators, even as much as Congress, if the organizations who brung you aren't telling you that this is a priority for them, it's not going to happen. And that's the reality in Sacramento. It's a reality in a lot of state legislators. The organizations drive what passes through the legislature, and it's a fight between those interest groups in the state capitol. AB 1400 is not the only.
One sec, real quick. I got to let Steve go to make his kids dinner.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you. I'll see you again next Tuesday. Tell people where they could find Rogue Scholar on Real Progressives.
Yeah, check out our webpage, realprogressives.org, and definitely find the show at Real Progress in Action on YouTube. Also, check out the podcast Macro and Cheese Saturday mornings on all your favorite podcasting platforms. And Jordan and gang, thank you guys so much for having me on. As always, this was a pleasure, and thank you so much for having this awesome discussion. I really appreciate meeting you. Hopefully, I can talk to you on my own show sometime as well.
I'd love that, Steve. Thank you. Great to meet you.
Thank you, Steve.
You got it.
So
have a good one, everybody.
Thank you. So, Michael, you're telling me that the authors of this bill are saying they didn't have enough institutional or organizational support when you have the California Nurses Association, which is a big organized, as far as I know, very organized, have been championing this along with the National Nurses United. And I believe other organizations have been. What do you mean by, what do they mean that they didn't have the organizational or institutional support?
Well, basically, unions weren't weighing in to make this a priority. That's what it comes down to. Other advocacy groups in the healthcare reform lobbying group were not demanding that this bill move. Community-based providers, frontline, community clinics, were not demanding that this be a priority. That's what it comes down to. I don't know I'm not going to name specific individual institutions or organizations, but that's what it takes to move in Sacramento. You've got a coalition of healthcare reform advocates, right, that works on all sorts of things, works on Health for All, the effort to cover undocumented residents of California. They succeeded in getting that to happen this year, most likely, right? The governor's endorsed it. They're going to move it through the budget process. That's what it takes. Right. And that was a multi-year effort. So you had, for example, the California Democratic Party. They said, okay, lobby your legislators for our package, our legislative package. Right. They didn't even mention AB 1400. The California Federation of Labor was not engaged in the last minute lobbying blitz, in part because there were unions in the Labor Federation who had some questions about the policy impact of AB 1400. So CNA is a hugely powerful and influential organization that deserves tons of credit for the kind of campaign that they mobilized, but they cannot do it alone.
Right.
That's, I think, what ultimately is being said here.
So where do things go next? Obviously, we know nationally, Medicare for all. Right now, there's not any momentum for that. But on the state level, where do activists go, whether it be in California or elsewhere, if they're fighting to get single payer enacted? I'll be honest, it's pretty Debbie Downer. If it's not going to happen in California, it's pretty challenging elsewhere then.
Well, first of all, let's remember what AB 1400 did. They took some amendments in the last week so that it ultimately became a bill that established a board that appointed by the governor and the legislature that would carry out a fiscal analysis and present and engage with the federal government for the necessary support and money, and then present a report on the fiscal viability of the program and an 8-year funding plan. And then that would be reviewed by the legislative committees and ultimately would require another vote of the Assembly and Senate by July 1st, 2024, and a vote of the people at the ballot in order to be implemented. So it's not the case that passing this to the Assembly and then the Senate and getting signed by the governor would enact CalCare. That was not on the table. What was on the table was the intent to go through a process that could come up with a program that could then be approved by the legislature and the voters. So that's number one. Let's be clear, right? And that wasn't going to happen before November of 2024 in the case of a ballot initiative. Secondly, we've got the Healthy California for All Commission, which is going to deliver a report in April. They're moving toward a plan for what they call unified financing, what we call single payer. They've published reports that show the fragmentation, waste, and huge cost of the present system. That's the context for putting an alternative financing program in place. You say the current system is going to cost $517 billion. The California Republican Party said single payer is going to cost $400 billion. Sounds like a deal to me. Let's put the taxes in the context of how the current spending of individuals and businesses is the greatest burden they face. That's the context in which to put public taxation. So we're going to be able to build on, I think, that report and move. Let's get everyone covered in health for all. Okay, it's not adequate. Let's unwind the privatization of the existing public program known as Medi-Cal, Medicaid, so that it doesn't just be, again, feeding at the public trough for profits. Let's establish a state healthcare budget, rate setting authority, and other cost control mechanisms, which we're going to have to do under single payer. And most importantly, let's get authorization to engage with the Biden administration and get the full federal support and resources we need. And then we can figure out how much California has to finance it. All those things can still be done. Let's do them. And let's build on the infrastructure that's been the grassroots infrastructure that was created with CalCare, and then get the organizational buy-in. That's what we've been focused on, is building the organizational capacity, right, that can actually win this.
Well, question also is, the institutional money that was flooding these politicians to vote no. So you could have a lot of organizational support, but if they are more threatened, or they find the trade-off more lucrative, yeah, I'll take my chances, pissing off Union A, Union B, this and that. I'm going to go over here and take this money and stick with the usual suspects. That's a hard thing to overcome. The other thing is, you mentioned federal support from the Biden administration. I mean, this is a president who said if Medicare for All passed Congress, he would veto it or he wouldn't sign it. So do you actually see support from the Biden administration? I mean, Republicans at the moment look like, Democrats might not have complete control either. So if it gained momentum in California, do you actually legitimately see the Biden administration working with California to implement this?
Well, Assemblymember Colera met with representatives of CMS, which is the agency that determines the approval of federal waiver applications. And they indicated that they would work with him to come up with federal support. This is purely an administrative act, and it doesn't actually implicate, I agree with you, their opposition to federal Medicare for all. I think ultimately this is a political strategy to move it and win it federally. I do think that, but it is not in the immediate term something that would threaten their their current position. So in that sense, yes, I think they would be supportive, and I think they would want to see California do what California wants to do. It is obviously a trove of Democratic money and votes, right? In terms of combating the industry campaign, that's where advocates, activists need to be clear about what a ballot initiative is going to mean. It's going to mean hundreds of millions of dollars against us. So how do we, in the meantime, build the organizational support, the resource base to compete on the ballot, right? When you got a major campaign like that fought on TV. And one of the key things is to get those deep pocket philanthropies that have been dedicated to universal health care, but have not clearly weighed in support of single payer. How do we get their engagement? How do we get their money involved in this fight? And that, I think, is a key reason why the Healthy California for All Commission, if it points toward single payer, is a way to bring in some of those deep pocket institutional players that have been on the sideline for single payer, but claim to support universal health care. Let's put their feet to the fire and engage them. And once you put that kind of money in play, then you're really talking about a much more level playing field when it comes to a ballot fight. I'm not saying that's automatic. I'm not even saying it's definitely going to happen. What I'm saying is that there are concrete steps that can be taken to make it more likely.
Michael Lighty, thank you very much. By the way, to the audience, at 8 o'clock around 8 o'clock Eastern, so in less than 2 hours, we'll be posting. Tina Desiree Berg did a follow-up interview with Amar Shergill. He's the head of the California Democratic Party's Progressive Caucus. So Tina interviewed him this morning on the vote being polled and kind of the next steps. So we're going to be posting that probably at 8 o'clock Eastern time right here on the channel. So if you want the skinny on what actually happened, not that you don't know what you're talking about, but obviously the Progressive Caucus in California were very instrumental in pounding the pavement to get to pass this. That's who you were referencing. They were threatening to pull endorsements, this and that, to people, to assembly members who voted no. So we'll have that interview, posting it at 8 o'clock Eastern. Thank you, Michael Lighty, fellow with the Sanders Institute, expert, one of the top experts, I'd say, on Medicare for all, universal health care, been fighting for it for many decades. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Really appreciate it. Great to see you again.
Absolutely. So that was Michael Lighty with the Sanders Institute. So great show between Steve Grumbine and Michael. Be back tomorrow. I believe, fingers crossed, that I'm going to have an interview with the attorney for Leonard Peltier. Leonard Peltier is a Native American who has been in prison for, I believe, 46 years. 46 years. Leonard Peltier has been in prison for 46 years, and he was clearly railroaded. He was accused of shooting at and killing FBI agents. This, to me, I mean, based on the evidence, there was no evidence. Witnesses were intimidated. Exculpatory evidence that could have freed Leonard Peltier and proven his innocence was withheld from Leonard Peltier's attorneys back in the 70s when he was convicted. And now Leonard Peltier, I believe he's 77 years old. He's got a lot of health problems, and he was just diagnosed with COVID in prison. So I'm going to be interviewing Leonard Peltier's attorney on the fight to get him freed, because there's been Native Americans, indigenous people, his tribe, which I think is Oglala, and I don't want to get it wrong. I know he's Oglala. I forget the other tribe, but they've been fighting to get him freed for decades. But now there's a renewed push. The fact that he's 77 years old, now he has COVID, and there are demands to President Biden to free him. So I'm going to interview Leonard Peltier's attorney tomorrow. So we'll have that on the live stream tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern time. Thank you for watching. A reminder. Sue, thank you. Oglala Sue, thank you for telling me. A reminder, please, if you can, sign up. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 a month. We got 4 new members today. Thank you, Sylvia, Stephanie, Tony, John, and Lila Charles. Thank you for signing up. We need as many people to sign up as possible that can. $5 a month. That's 16 cents a day. Sign up, statuscoup.com/join. It funds our on-the-ground reporting. I'm hoping to get back on the ground in the next few weeks. It funds the investigative reporting. If you haven't read the bombshell Flint story I just broke 2 weeks ago, it's at the top of my Twitter page. All of these things cost money. Leonard is Chippewa and Oglala Lakota. Thank you. I'll have that right when I interview his attorney tomorrow. But we need it. And all this other stuff. I need to pay Colin, obviously. We have 2 people I've brought on for help in marketing and analytics. Just the cost of our live view, which is the broadcasting, the broadcasting device we use to go out on the ground. Even if I don't go on the ground 1 month, I got to pay this. We got to pay the $700-800 for the data to that and the server. Just the text messages you receive when we go live, because we've been creating a text list because YouTube a lot of times isn't notifying people. That's costing us $400 a month, just that text list. There's a lot of fixed costs that go on behind the scenes to do this, to do real reporting, on-the-ground reporting, investigative reporting. So if you can, statuscoup.com/join. $5 a month. There's other plans too. I've been really encouraged. We've been seeing a lot of people who were signed up at $5 a month increasing their membership. Colin, if you could come on for a second just to tell people how they could do that if you're already a member and you want to increase from $5 to $10 a month.
Yeah, on the new site, you just click on your little profile icon thing you see in the top right corner, and you just click on your profile, and right there it shows your member level at whatever level you're at, and right next to it has a little button that says change, and you can change that to whichever level, the $5, $10, or $20 level, or the yearly level, obviously.
So StatusCoupMember.com, if you're a new member, StatusCoupMember.com. And like he said, hover over your profile and it should show you right there how to upgrade if you want. But I love it. I mean, definitely if $5 is all you can afford, that's fine. But I'm really encouraged that we've had a lot of people signing up or moving from $5 to $10. We've even had people moving up to $20. So thank you. And by the way, if you're a member, StatusCoupMember.com, hover over member content. So that's how you see content that's just for members. You go to StatusCoupMember.com. Hold on, let me do it myself so I know what I'm telling you is right. StatusCoupMember.com. And once you get to the site, you go right over members, which is on the top bar. And once you click on members, you'll be able to view our content. The content there, we have behind the scenes videos just for members. You'll be able to look at our if you weren't in the members call, because we do a monthly call through Zoom with our members. If you missed that call, we did it last week. You could watch back the whole thing. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, that's the deal. If you can, sign up, statuscoup.com/join. And we're also going to be coming up with some new ideas for members, for new members. We're also, Colin, come back if you can. If you are an older member, so if you signed up to Status Coup as a member before October of last year, so if you signed up as a member in 2018, in 2019, in 2020, or in 2021 before October, because October is when we switched to our new member site. If you signed up before October of last year, we want you to move over to our new member site because you're signed up on the old member site. So it's very important. The old member site, the original one that we used, that one we were having problems with people's memberships going through, payments going through, all that. The new site has been a lot more flawless. So if you are a member that signed up before October of last year, switch over to our new membership site. If you're not sure which one you are, you could, how would they know, Colin?
You'll know just by, well, besides when you signed up, but if you go to statuscoup.com, if that's where you log in, like that website, then you're on the old one. If you can type in statuscoup.com/join as like a shortcut to always get to the new site, or like Jordan said, you can do statuscoupmember.com. And yeah, the easiest way is just to find out which one you log into, essentially. But if you have any issues or confusion, you can just email us info@statuscoup.com, and I respond to those so I can help you get everything sorted out if you run into any issues.
Yeah, so info@statuscoup.com. If you're not sure which one you're on, if you signed up since October, you're on the brand new one. You're good. But if you're not sure, you could email us. But we're trying to move as many people over as possible to the new site. The new site, has a lot more functionality. We could do a lot more things for members on the new site. And the payments have been going through a lot more reliably than the old site. Unfortunately, the old site, which is not through us, it's just kind of a plugin that we used when we first started Status Coup. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, there's issues with payments failing, stuff not going through. So we're trying to get everybody off that leaky boat over to the new site, which is StatusCoupMember.com. And again, if you could put the link back up, if we did a video giving you the directions how to do it. So StatusCoupMember.com/member switch. Colin will also put that link in the description under this video. So if you don't have time to write that down, it'll be in the description right under the live stream video. That will have a video where Colin explains for you how to switch from the old site to the new site. It'll also have the instructions written out. So even if you're not tech savvy, this is pretty straightforward. It should take you no more than a couple minutes. And all it entails is, if you're on the old site, canceling your membership at the old site and then just signing up brand new at the new site. So canceling at the old site, moving over to the new site. So we hope we can get more people to do that. I know people don't like doing things more than once, but this is to help Status Coup continue. We need to get as many of our members that signed up at the old site over to the brand new site. And the brand new site, if you're not a member yet, sign up, statuscoup.com/join. Thank you guys for watching. Oh, you know what? I will add one thing. I got to tell you, I find it very interesting. I did a video yesterday, or a topic yesterday, where I said, I'm not for Joe Rogan being censored. I don't think Joe Rogan should be deplatformed. I'm not for that. I think he's irresponsible. I think he's been irresponsible on a lot of things he's done on COVID. But I don't think his show should be removed from Spotify. At the same time, I said, I don't have a problem. People, you could have freedom of speech, but that's not freedom from consequences. So I don't have a problem. People can respond, answer with their wallets. And if they want to cancel their Spotify memberships because they believe Joe Rogan is pushing information, they have every right to do that. But the first thing I said was, I'm not for Joe Rogan being removed or censored. But with that, I added the nuance, because apparently on YouTube, you're not allowed to provide nuance anymore. People don't like that. I said, that doesn't mean he's beyond criticism, because there's a lot of cultists that if you dare criticize Joe Rogan, Jesus Christ, they can't tolerate it. They cannot handle it. And just criticizing him, they think you're censoring him. It's not censorship to say he's been irresponsible in some of the things he has said and done on COVID, while at the same time saying, I don't believe he should be removed from Spotify, because I don't think he should be removed. I don't think he should be censored. But it was just wild to me. Literally even reading the comments under the video that we posted earlier. I don't know if people actually watched the video or they just looked at the headline, but literally right in the first minute, I said, I don't think he should be removed. But then you get in the comments, people flooding, Jordan, you're calling for censorship. This and that. It's did you watch the video? No, I'm not calling for censorship. I'm saying, and we played a very specific clip where Joe Rogan early on in the pandemic was saying, if a healthy 21-year-old asked me if they should get vaccinated, I would say no. Well, that was irresponsible, because there's a whole lot of data showing, and I went through it yesterday, that plenty of people in their 20s and 30s and 40s, generally healthy people, have been hospitalized with COVID. And yeah, there's a good amount of those people that have died. So my point was, nobody is perfect, but COVID should not be considered just any other political thing where, give your opinion. Everybody has a different opinion. No. It's a public health crisis. It's a public health crisis. So what I was saying yesterday, which I don't think people understood, I was not calling for him to be deplatformed. I'm not. I don't think he should be deplatformed. But what I was trying to say is freedom of speech, that doesn't come without responsibility, particularly if you have the biggest audience in America. So he's talking to, I think, 11 million listeners. So my whole point was, when he's just casually telling young people, yeah, I don't think you need to get vaccinated. A lot of his audience are younger men, by the way. He doesn't have the medical expertise to say that. He doesn't have the epidemiological expertise to say that. So you could say, well, it's his opinion. But when you have to understand, when you have a massive audience, you also have a responsibility that when you're giving your opinion, you have to understand you also have you're influencing the way these people think. You're influencing, in many cases, what they end up deciding to do. So a lot of people are just like, well, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Yeah, on many things. But on a public health crisis, you have to be careful with what you are telling people to do. Am I saying he's responsible if people die? No, but there are a lot of people in his audience that are listening to Joe Rogan, who they trust. And I've actually watched some of his clips unrelated to COVID, and I've liked them. I don't have time in my day to watch or listen for 3 hours to Joe Rogan. I don't have that kind of time. But I like some of the stuff he does. But the point is, and it's not just about, this isn't just about Joe Rogan. This is about a whole lot of other hosts. There's this growing toxic mentality on the internet and even on the left that if you dare criticize one of your preferred hosts, I'm canceling you. I saw people today, I'm unsubscribing. I'm canceling my membership because I dared to say two things. One, I don't think you should be censored. I don't think you should be removed. But I also, here are some things he has said that are not true, that are reckless. It is not true that if you're just young and healthy, don't worry about it. You don't have to get vaccinated. That ain't true, folks. I'm not bothering with the anti-vaxxers anymore. I've given up on that. But just being young and healthy does not mean you have no vulnerability at all to COVID-19 and various variants. And there's a lot of data to show that. There are a lot of young people, 20s, 30s, 40s, without major health problems that have been hospitalized, severely ill, now have long COVID or have died. Now, older people are more vulnerable, absolutely. But you can't have it both ways. And this is what I was saying yesterday, which people don't like, apparently. You can't just say in his Instagram video, which I thought he was fairly contrite and did a pretty good job in his 10-minute Instagram video. In his Instagram video, he said, well, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a medical expert. Okay, but you can't say that now. But in the beginning of the pandemic, you're just casually on your show saying, 21-year-olds, don't bother. If you're healthy, nah, you don't have to get vaccinated. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways. So he has his freedom of speech. I'm not curtailing that. I'm not telling Spotify I don't think he should be removed. At the same time, for free speech absolutists, the viewers and Spotify listeners have every right to exercise their freedom. And if they don't like what Joe Rogan is doing, or they believe he's pushing dangerous misinformation, they have every right to cancel their Spotify memberships. But it was just crazy to me because, like, Colin, are you there? It was just crazy to me, Colin, because, like, I literally said in the first minute of the video, I do not believe Joe Rogan should be removed from Spotify or deplatformed or censored. But then I played the clip where he spewed reckless bullshit, telling, if you're young and healthy, don't worry about it. Live your life. And then we outlined in 2021 and even recently the growing number of hospitalizations among young people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that are unvaccinated, the increased among teens that were unvaccinated. But I literally said he should not be deplatformed, this and that. I mean, you were looking at the comments. There was a flood of comments saying, you're calling to censor Joe Rogan. I'm just baffled by that.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I made a point when I edited the segment out to make sure that that was at the forefront so that there wasn't any confusion about that. And the same thing happened when you were live talking about the segment too, where you said multiple times how you didn't want him taken off of Spotify, and the live comments were just constantly like, "You're pro censorship, yada yada," and it's, you realize at some point people don't care about what you're actually saying. They just
it's a cult. It's a cult mentality, and it's not just about Joe Rogan. By the way, there's a lot of other popular hosts that if you dare criticize anything about them, their followers are, I'm canceling you, I'm unsubscribing, I'm canceling my membership. That's it. I don't care on the left. That is the mentality on the right. There are Fox News viewers. Look, when Fox News temporarily would not push the Stop the Steal stuff, what happened? The bullshit election fraud stuff. Fox News viewers jumped ship. They went to Newsmax and that other crazy outlet, OANN, who were pushing Trump's Stop the Steal election fraud. So this is a very right-wing mentality that unfortunately has been growing for years on the left. This whole like, I'm canceling you because you're not feeding me what I already believe. You're not feeding me my pre-existing views. You're not validating what I believe 100% of the time. You know what? If that's your mentality, and anyone daring to criticize Joe Rogan, and I also said I like some of what he does, but if the growing mental thing on the left is this just crazy snowflake nature that, if you dare criticize Joe Rogan or you dare criticize my preferred host, I'm canceling you or unsubscribing, even when what I'm saying is don't censor him, don't deplatform him. I just think that's crazy. But there are two things that are not up for debate, because a lot of people want to just say, oh, let's have a debate. Everyone's got it. People have different opinions. Let's debate it. There are certain things that are not for debate because they're just facts. So what I laid out, I actually said, I have a bigger problem. I have less of a problem with Joe Rogan having Dr. Robert Malone on and Peter McCullough, I think was his name, on. I have a less of a problem with that. I think he should push back more. I think if he researched more, because he even said, yeah, a lot of it's just kind of free flowing. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I'm not as well prepared as I should be. That's what he said in his Instagram video. But I wish he would push back more on a lot of their claims that are just, it's not even contrarianism. It's just literally lies and fact free. So if you're going to have people on that are giving a different viewpoint, you need to take the time to research so that he might not be a doctor, he's not a medical expert, could push back a little bit more. But my bigger issue is not that he has these controversial guests on. My bigger issue is, one, I don't think he has enough of actual experts on that are, people could call it mainstream, but are to push back on these controversial guests who they're controversial because they're pushing lies. They are pushing stuff that is not based on fact, Malone and others. My bigger problem is when he's not talking to medical experts and he's just casually free flowing, telling young people, yeah, that was my dog barking. Casually telling people, yeah, if you're young and healthy, you don't need to get vaccinated. I don't think he's intentionally trying to harm anyone, but he needs to understand you're not just having a conversation with your buddy. You have 11 million people listening, and there's a responsibility with that. And this doesn't mean that I'm praising corporate media, because CNN, MSNBC, they push disinformation all the time. But we can't, as progressives, call out the corporate media and call out CNN and call out MSNBC and call out the New York Times and call out the Washington Post for misinformation. But then we can't dare criticize Joe Rogan, who might be good on a lot of things. And I think he has great guests on from time to time. And I like that, it's a casual conversation for a lot of it. But when you're having a conversation about a deadly virus and it's a public health crisis, I guess my point is, don't be so casual about it. You have to understand that your words carry a lot of weight with your listeners. So I think Joe Rogan, when he's talking about, if a young person asks me, should I get vaccinated? What he should have said, in my view, is, well, I would tell a young person to speak with his doctor, because I'm not a medical expert and I don't have the expertise to tell you whether to get vaccinated or not. He could say, if it were me, if I was 21 and healthy, for me personally, I probably wouldn't. That's fine if he wants to say that. But he should be very clearly saying, because I think a lot of people are like, well, duh, Jordan, nobody's taking medical advice from Joe Rogan. Well, not duh. There are a lot of people, not just with Joe Rogan, but frankly, with Jimmy Dore and others, that are watching and listening to these people, and they are forming their opinions on COVID, on the vaccine, on a lot of things based on what they're saying. So it's not just I'm having a casual conversation, but you can't blame Joe Rogan for what people do. People, whether it be CNN, MSNBC, Joe Rogan, if you have a massive platform, it does come with responsibility. Even if you're a commentator, even if you're not a capital J journalist, you have to, particularly with a massive audience like Rogan has, you can't, be casual about some things. But with a topic like this, where literally what you're saying is influencing the way your listeners think, the actions they might take or not take, don't be so casual about that. Make clear, I'm not a medical expert. Make clear, I can't definitively tell people whether they should get vaccinated or not, because I don't know. And you, in your mind, might think, if you have a healthy lifestyle, if you're young, if you don't have any major health problems, I don't think you need to. But that's your uneducated opinion. That's the point. That's your uneducated opinion on the topic. You don't have any medical expertise, scientific expertise, epidemiological expertise to know whether just working out and eating healthy and being young makes you completely not vulnerable to a deadly airborne pandemic that has more severe variants forming, right? Omicron was less severe from what it looks like than Delta. But if you don't have that background, you shouldn't be casually telling your audience, if you're young and healthy, work out, don't worry about it. That was my point. I made that point by also saying I don't think he should be removed. But I think there's a broader problem. I think there is a broader problem on the left, online. There has become a really tribal, toxic mentality that if people aren't fed what they already believe 90 to 100% of the time, if one opinion or one video is you just don't agree with it, or it ruffles your feathers, unsubscribing, canceling my membership. That's a really right-wing mentality. And that's a cult-like mentality. And if that's your mentality, okay, but you're looking to join an echo chamber. If that's your mentality, you're looking to have what you already think just fed to you. That's that mentality. And I think that's the wrong mentality to have. Now, if a channel you watch is completely going off, in a strange direction, and they sound completely different than they always had, and they're completely abandoning their principles over and over and over again, that's one thing. But if you simply don't, if you don't agree with something, or you think Jordan has a bad take or somebody else has a bad take, like, that's silly to unsubscribe because of that. And if you're so ruffled, if your feathers are so ruffled by Joe Rogan being criticized even slightly, get a grip. Get a grip. I'm sorry. Get a grip. Jordan, they aren't serious. They're probably actual subscribers. They are trolling you and you're feeding them. No, I'm talking literally about Status Coup subscribers who said they were unsubscribing. So
I'll pop in and say that quite literally within minutes of us posting the Joe Rogan segment, we lost at least 8 subscribers within the first 5 minutes or so.
Right.
So people are, it's not people saying it, it's people legit subscribing.
And and tomorrow it'll be more. When it's in total, we'll have lost a lot of subscribers. I'm not going to not do a topic or give my opinion for fear of losing subscribers. I'm not going to trade my integrity to grow subscribers or to keep subscribers. If people are going to unsubscribe because I won one video or I dare criticize Joe Rogan, then they would have at some point unsubscribed over something else. You can't trade your integrity to try and chase subscribers. But my whole point is this cult mentality and like, oh, you dare criticize, this host that I love or I worship? Like, grow up. Seriously, grow up. And it was just unbelievable to me. I was like, damn, what are people even talking about? I literally said in the first fucking minute, I don't want him deplatformed. I don't think he should be deplatformed. But you're still being said you're censoring this and that. It's crazy. Tesla, I don't agree with Jordan on a lot what he says about COVID because sometimes feel he fearmongers a bit, but I don't unsubscribe because he still does good journalism. Thank you. I don't agree that I'm fearmongering. We could have a disagreement on that, but that's what I'm talking about. You might not agree on my view or me, telling you data, or you might not agree on all things COVID related. But you see the bigger picture and the good stuff that we do cover. So you're an adult who doesn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater because you don't like one topic or my take on one topic. That's what I'm talking about. I wish more people were like that. Because there's way too much tribal bullshit going on. It's really, really unfortunate. Let me read a super chat or two. Tony, new YouTube member, Tony DeMaio. Welcome, Tony. Yes, you can also sign up as a YouTube member. Robert Copeland, $5. Jordan, I live in California, and let me say that all of the people that are supporting CalCare were very upset that AB 1400 didn't come up for a vote. Yes, and we're going to be posting Tina's interview soon on the CalCare vote being pulled. D Nord, $5. I'm broke, but I can give up a meal to keep real journalism like this going. Thanks for doing stellar work. Thank you, D, but please don't give up any meals. I want you to eat. Thank you for the super chat, but don't do that again. I don't want you doing without a meal to give us $5. Thank you. Fly Chomper Fly, $3. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. Be back at it tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern time. Remember, we're now live Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern time. Fridays, 4 o'clock Eastern time for happy hour. Thank you for watching. Talk to you tomorrow.